Places. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Fixed Blood Sugar webinar. Welcome back. Today is episode number 256. So we've done just a few webinars talking about type 2, just a few.
Dang,
Let's
that's a
see
lot.
here. It is a lot. Today, we're going to talk about the risk factors. We want to hear from you. So, if you are someone maybe who was diagnosed with type 2, maybe you're long into your journey or you've experienced reversal, I would be curious to know maybe what your risk factors were, how you ended up with type 2, what you wish you would have done differently, maybe. Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear that from you. I think that'll help some other people as well. I also want to just remind you guys that Dr. Saunders is not your doctor. So please discuss anything that we may chat about today with your provider before you implement anything. So hopefully you have a great provider that is willing to work with you in that way. There are some really good doctors out there, we have found. In fact, we get a lot of questions from people like, how do I find a doctor like Dr. Saunders in my area? And I just tell everyone, go to Google and look up functional medicine doctors and in their area. And that would be a good place to start, I think. Any other suggestions?
And that actually is a good place to start. And what's interesting is that, like in Santa Barbara, at least, and I'm sure around, we all know each other. I talk to the other doctors in town who do what I do, and we have the same patients in common very often, and because people, they shop around. They go, I go to that one. I go to this one. I'm not getting better. I'm going over there,
Yeah.
and they tend to look for the same kind of doctor. So if one doesn't work out, ask them who else in town is there that does this, that does functional medicine, or who could do that, or who would be better for my situation or something like that.
I also find, so I'm in South Dakota, and what happens here is often the good doctors like you are so hard to get into that you just start booking appointments with as many as you can to see who you can get into first because you're so
Oh,
busy. You're so busy. And but we're so thankful for you. So anyway, let's dig into this. Hello, those of you on YouTube. We're excited to have you as well. I've been streaming these live on YouTube, so you're getting the unedited version, viewers. Hopefully, we don't say anything wrong, but here we go. Let's dig into this. So we're talking about the type 2 risk factors. Again, comment here in the chat. Let us know maybe where you started, what maybe led to your type 2, maybe something that was what led you here. And I'd love to hear that from you. If you have questions as we go, please post those in the Q&A or in the comments on YouTube. Okay. Oh, we have Tom here. You're back. Welcome. Terry's here. Juliana is here. We're excited to have you guys back. All right, let's get this party started. Type 2 risk factors. So this is what I'm going to do. We're going to do a little quizzing. We're just chatting about this. It's kind of funny that I can ask him things and not prep him super well, and he usually knows the answers, which blows my mind. Apparently, he likes to study this stuff, and apparently, he knows what he's talking about because I quiz him sometimes. Very few times do we have things that we ask that you don't know about. So, there are a lot of people that will say, what do you think about this supplement or drug? And you'll be like, I have no idea. Doesn't happen very often though. Okay. First risk factor that I want to talk about, and you tell us if this is a true risk factor or not. Number one, physical inactivity.
Okay. Physical inactivity is definitely a risk factor. This is actually really important because when you're physically inactive, then your muscles become more resistant to bringing glucose into the muscles, and it requires more insulin. And so that's kind of a starting point for insulin resistance. If you don't use the energy in your muscles, then your muscles go, no, we don't need any sugar. We don't need any glucose. So we're going to block the insulin receptors. And that's part of what happens when the cells get overloaded with glycogen. Those muscle cells, they just fill up with glycogen, and they're like, no, we're done here. So one of the things that you have to do that's really important if you're doing the diabetes solution kit is you start phase one and you start exercising, and you start with what you can do. Not you don't have to go run a marathon the first day. What you do is you do what you can do, and then just add a little bit, 1 or 2 steps each day, and it adds up and it makes a difference, and you're using up that glycogen in the muscles so that you can be more insulin sensitive. That's really what you're looking for, is insulin sensitivity. And the muscles are a big part of that. So don't discount that inactivity. The muscle activity is really important.
All right, very interesting. Okay, let's move on. I'm going to do another one here. We're already getting a bunch of questions. So we'll go through these and then take your questions. That's considered a risk factor for type 2 is gestational diabetes.
Okay, gestational diabetes is an indication that you have some insulin resistance. And during gestation, you're going to have more insulin resistance because of the hormone changes that are happening during the gestation, during pregnancy. So the so then the baby's delivered and everything seems to be okay. Like you're like, oh, I'm okay. This only happens during pregnancy. But no, that's an indicator that you're likely or you could easily get insulin resistance later on, or progress to insulin resistance. So yeah, in a way, it's a risk factor. In a way, it's a harbinger of things to come if you don't like make some changes.
All right, here we go. Next risk factor, aging. Now, I'm just going to comment on this because I have had several people on this webinar who have said their doctor told them that someone, I think it was somebody in their 80s or 90s, that if they had type 2, that was normal. Once you get to that age, you just typically have type 2. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that that's really unfortunate that somebody would say that, because it's not about age. Yeah, if you let things go, just like with the gestational diabetes, you're in your 20s and you're pregnant and you have a high blood sugar during the pregnancy. Then you deliver and everything seems to be okay. And then in your 40s, you start your blood sugar starts getting high, and they go, oh yeah, you have type 2 diabetes. Yeah, you're just getting old. No, it's not getting old. It's really about not fixing the problem, or having like that inactivity for 20 years, or eating too much for 20 years. So yeah, it happens in aging. I mean, they used to call it adult onset diabetes was the name for type 2. But as time goes by, you're more likely to get it just because of you're building up problems over time. But it's not because you're old. That's not why.
All right. Our next risk factor, family history.
Family history is something, and that's real, and that's in both humans. Studies in animals show the same thing. What's really interesting is that if the mother has diabetes, the children are more likely to get diabetes. But if the mother during pregnancy, this is in rat studies, if the mother during pregnancy eats a ketogenic diet, and that means like only fat, like burning fat and not burning, it's like phase one of our diabetes solution kit. Phase one is a ketogenic diet. If during pregnancy the diabetic rat eats a ketogenic diet, the babies won't get it. But if she eats a carbohydrate diet, the babies will get it. So yeah, it's not just genetic, it's epigenetics. Epigenetics is which genes are turned on and which genes are turned off. And that happens before they're born, before they're conceived, after conception, during pregnancy, and then after that. So it's not, like it has to be something that you chose to eat. It could be something your mom chose to eat, yes, or your dad for that matter, which is interesting too.
Ooh,
Go
wow.
figure on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, interesting. And this next risk factor has to do with being overweight. If you're overweight, does that lead to type 2? But something of interest, since we're kind of talking about food, if you were on the webinar a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about the carnivore diet. And I just had been doing some research into it and just seeing the placentas of women who are avoiding like carbs, and those who are maybe more on maybe straight vegan diets, and what a drastic difference. So just the importance of the food that we're eating really does affect our body. And I'm going to be honest, just in the past couple days, I've changed my diet and I can tell a big difference just in 2 days.
Oh,
So
really? What'd
mostly
you do?
mostly no sugar, anything.
Yeah.
So that's also carbs, you know.
Yeah.
But I'm definitely more hungry, but I'm eating
Oh,
more protein.
interesting.
I'm eating more protein. So yeah, just kind of interesting.
I have a friend. I have a friend right now. I went to his house yesterday or 2 days ago. He's on a total carnivore diet, like nothing plant at all.
Wow.
Everything is animal. And he said it's great. He says I'm not hungry. He says usually I have to eat like every 2 hours, like I'm working. I'm like, oh, I'm really hungry, and I got to go eat something, and get my sugar fix. He says, 2 o'clock comes around. He has an 8-ounce steak, eats the whole thing, and then he's not hungry for the rest of the day. At night, he comes home. I'm not that hungry. And then the next day, he'll get up and he's not hungry. And at 2 o'clock, he'll eat, some piece of meat or something. It's
Yes.
like, wow, 1 meal a day, and he's not getting hungry. That's one thing I've never done is a carnivore, ketogenic or carnivore diet.
I'm finding there's some mental pieces early on that you have to deal with when you're used to eating different things. And sometimes I'm like, this is another thing to think about too. I think a lot of people undereat also when they're not eating enough. I have a tendency to not probably eat as much protein as I actually should be eating. And it's hard for me to eat protein. So I got a lot of things that I'm really noticing right now. So
Hmm.
but food is important. So, what do you think about the risk factor of being overweight? How does that impact type 2?
Okay, that is a good question. So, for all of you out there, it's not about fat. That's not it. The problem is insulin resistance. And yes, you will gain weight more easily when you have insulin resistance. You're going to put fat on because insulin is the hormone that tells your body don't use fat for energy, store it, store it, store it. So you're storing all this fat. And so, yeah, it's easy to gain weight, but not everybody does. We've had a lot of people on this program who go, gosh, I really want to do this diabetes solution kit, but I don't want to lose weight, man. I'm thin enough as it is. And so that's why I tell them, measure the insulin, C-peptide, sugar, and glucose and hemoglobin A1C. Measure those to see your pancreas function. Because if you're not gaining weight, does that mean you don't have excessive insulin? Or some people are genetically insulin resistant, which is a different issue altogether. So, and they won't gain weight because they're resistant to insulin. Insulin tells your body to put on fat. So, because of all the differences, it's really not about fat. Yes, fat is a byproduct or a consequence of most people with insulin resistance. But there are plenty of people who are way overweight and don't have insulin resistance. So, don't equate the two. You can't tell by looking.
Sure. This next one I feel like is pretty self-explanatory. If you have pre-diabetes, you're probably likely to get type 2.
Okay, pre-diabetes, yeah. That's definitely just because look at it on a scale instead of a yes or no question. It's where are you on the scale, and so if you're way up here, then it's pretty easy to say okay, it's you're likely to progress, get worse.
Right. How about high cholesterol?
Okay, high cholesterol is not specifically related to type 2. There is something called metabolic syndrome where you have high cholesterol, high blood sugar, obesity around the middle, high blood pressure. That syndrome, metabolic syndrome, is related to insulin resistance. It's a common thing because insulin tells your body to make more cholesterol. So in a sense, yes, but it's kind of like obesity. It's a consequence of certain people with insulin resistance, but not everybody with type 2 is going to have that problem.
Okay. Similar to family history a little bit, we have genetics. What role does that play?
Okay, so the family history is like the epigenetics. That's the stuff that your father, mother, choose to do that gets passed on to you. That's the epigenetic. Now, genetics is that is your gene. That is the proteins that you make, and if you make certain kinds of proteins, for example, you could make an abnormal insulin. You can make an abnormal insulin receptor, so that your insulin is just fine. But it's supposed to be like this, and it's like this, and so the insulin can't really bind there very well, and it doesn't work very well. The genetics can lead to insulin resistance for a lot of different reasons. It's not just the insulin receptor. I'm just saying that's an obvious one, but there's enzymes and all those peptides that you hear about now. Everybody's going like crazy on peptides. Like people are getting injections of Mounjaro and glucagon and human growth hormone. These are all peptide hormones, and they all affect how your metabolism works. And so if you're genetically predisposed and you don't make them right, or you don't make the receptors right, or they're not secreted properly, or the gland doesn't work right, or for whatever reason, genetically, if they're not working, then you could be predisposed to diabetes.
Okay. Some of these I feel like overlap a little bit. Sedentary lifestyle.
Yeah, sedentary lifestyle, that's not using your muscles. If man, like me, I sit all day. Here I am sitting. I should be standing and doing this, right? But even that, just standing, okay, that's okay. But that's still kind of sedentary. It used to be that all the work had to be done with muscles. So if you wanted to dig a hole, you had to go actually get a shovel and use your own muscles and do it. Now you call someone, okay, can you bring a tractor over and dig a hole for me? And go, 5 minutes, they got it all done. And it's a completely different world now where you don't have to use your muscles. And that's kind of a problem. So we have to do stupid stuff, use our muscles for no reason at all, just to build muscles. So people go to the gym and they're lifting weights. They're doing all this work. Man, they're working really hard with their muscles and getting nothing done. All they're doing is building muscle. All that work isn't like going towards like energy or accomplishing something so I try to work in my garden. I go run. I run and then I work out. I do push-ups and sit-ups and run. And then I try to get out and do something with my muscles because
this past weekend, my husband and I actually mowed at our church, and we have a lot of land. And so when the other one wasn't mowing, we pulled weeds, and we were there for 4.5 hours just doing stuff like that. That was a great workout. I felt good about it. I used all parts of my body, and I agree. Those kind of things feel good in many ways. So, all right, let's move to our next one here. Ethnicity.
Ethnicity, again, is something like genetics, but it's not just genetics. When they did a study on diabetes in the United Kingdom, they found that there were clear ethnic differences in groups that got diabetes versus those that didn't. And a part of it is lifestyle. Part of this is the way you eat. So if you're in Italy and you're living on pasta and bread and cereal and couscous and all that stuff. You're going to have your lifestyle is different, and so yeah, you can say it's ethnic in a way, um, uh, but not necessarily just ethnic. It's a lifestyle also.
Okay, another risk factor for type 2 diabetes is cardiovascular disease. What are your thoughts?
Okay, if you have cardiovascular disease, it's likely that you are predisposed to type 2 diabetes as well. And so, again, you have an association, but without a causal connection. Heart disease does not cause type 2 diabetes, and type 2 diabetes does not cause heart disease. But there's an association because the metabolic problem that causes both diabetes and heart disease has similar problems associated with it. So you get heart disease because of inflammation, clotting, and that inflammation is also related to getting diabetes where you can't use blood sugar properly. So there's an association, but not causation.
Okay, next is obesity. And how is that different from being overweight?
Yeah, okay. Overweight is technically 25, body mass index of 25. Obesity is over 30. So obese is very large and having a lot of fat. But again, it's not necessarily being obese is not necessarily a causative factor of diabetes. There is an association again, and you are likely to gain weight very easily when you get type 2 because the increased insulin is telling your body to store fat, and so you're storing, and it blocks you from using fat for energy. So that's a possibility, but there's plenty of people who are obese and don't have type 2.
All right, next risk factor is alcohol.
Alcohol. Oh, alcohol is kind of sneaky. It sneaks up on a lot of people. And a lot of people are told it's because you're old, and these are people like they just have their wine with dinner every night. That's all. We're not talking about they're not drinking a fifth or a whole bottle of wine or anything. They're just drinking. They're just a glass of wine every night, and the problem is they do it at night, and that alcohol, it acts like sugar and it damages the liver. So you have fatty liver or liver damage, and the liver has to maintain your metabolism. So there are several things going on with toxicity and then the added sugar that the alcohol produces. And some people detox alcohol really easily. Oh, my son just told me about a new kind of alcohol that is non-hangover alcohol, and it's a beta hydroxybutyrate alcohol. So it's a butyric acid with an alcohol instead of the acid, and then your body takes off the alcohol and makes it into an acid. So you never get the aldehyde that causes acid aldehyde that causes the hangovers. You don't get it. Instead, you get beta hydroxybutyrate, which is actually an energy source for your brain. So this is like a new kind of alcohol. I'm sure that it's kind of expensive to make it in the huge quantities. You can ferment beer in those huge. I don't know if you ever seen those. Man, there's like I don't know how many tens of thousands of gallons they have in them at a time, and I don't think they're going to get beta hydroxybutyrate in that amount. But
Wow.
anyway, so alcohol, yes, it is a risk factor, and some people it affects more than others, just like anything else.
All right, the last risk factor is insulin resistance.
Oh, insulin resistance. You know what? That's the problem, insulin resistance. In fact, it would be much better if we called type 2 diabetes insulin resistance instead of type 2 diabetes, because that's really what it is. And that's really what the problem is. And that's really what you want to overcome is insulin resistance. Instead of saying, because diabetes literally means peeing too much. And some people have no urinary problems at all. They're not getting up at night 3 times a urinate. They're not peeing all day long. And yet they technically, they have diabetes by definition. And yet they're not peeing too much. So the name doesn't fit the disease. Whereas if we just called it insulin resistance, that would fit nicely.
All right. We're going to dig into some of these questions, and there'll be some overlapping things I think here that we'll talk about.
Yeah, Margaret's thinking her question was skipped.
Oh, yeah, we haven't even gotten to any of the questions yet. So you're okay, you guys. You know what? If you can put them in the Q&A, that really helps me a lot to manage those. So I do want to comment on something here. Tom said, my father was diagnosed with diabetes when he was in his 50s. I was diagnosed with diabetes when I was 50, which is interesting. But Tom says, I was overweight and I didn't get much exercise. That was about 20 years ago.
I hope things have changed since then.
Yes. All right. Here we go. We're going to dig into the questions here. Suzanne says, during fasting, when my blood pressure drops low and I get very dizzy, what should I do? You shouldn't ask Dr. Saunders this question, because I'll tell you what he would do. He would just pass out. But okay, I'll let you answer.
No, that's right. That's what I do. Yeah. So getting dizzy. The best thing to do is wait it out. Sit down, lay down, and it goes away like in 30 seconds or a minute or two, maybe. And the reason why is because those hypoglycemic episodes are actually it's the process of healing. As you're healing, the blood sugar drops low, and the low blood sugar stimulates your systems, your energy systems, to make more insulin receptors, so you become more sensitive to insulin. So it's actually good for you. I know people don't like to hear that, and doctors would freak out. I think they would be pulling their hair out if any doctor heard me say that that hypoglycemia is good for you. But you know what? I've read the research, and the RAD research is pretty clear on that hypoglycemia is good for you.
Okay. Frank says, what is the reading on my healthcare monitoring watch, which has 3 excursions up to or exceeding 7.7 to 8.0 each day following meals, from lows around 3.3 to 4.7 mean? What does that mean?
Okay, what does it mean? So the watch, is it a watch or the continuous glucose monitor? If it's the CGM, what it means is your blood sugar's bouncing around. Okay, so this is kind of important. So just to put into perspective those numbers for other people, the 3 numbers, so if you're 3 is about in the 50s, it's pretty low, between or 60s. So that's low blood sugar, low blood glucose. And then when it's 8 or 9, you're talking 180, 190. So that's the range that he's talking about. He's saying and so the question here is like, what the heck? Why is my range so wide? And why doesn't it correlate perfectly with meals and stuff? Take into account that there's a lot more involved in what your glucose level is than just what you ate and how much insulin you make. There's glucagon, is a hormone that tells your liver to make glucose and put it out into your blood. So people say, I haven't eaten anything and my blood sugar's shooting up. What the heck? Well, that's called glucagon. That's what you normally do. That's what everybody normally does. But most people aren't insulin resistant, so it doesn't shoot up high. It goes up and stays at a good level. So the changes in your blood glucose are just highly variable depending on you. And so when you see that too high, too low difference in your blood glucose, it means that you're insulin resistant, and it means that you have some work to do on phase 1 of the program to get into, bring it into a normal range.
All right. I just want to remind you guys again, because I see there's another message here from Andrew. He doesn't think I see his question. We just started answering questions. And so I'm in the Q&A, and usually we do this on the second half of the webinar. I'll start answering questions just so you guys are aware. I'm not skipping your questions. Okay. Let's go. Okay, so here's a question. I'm not sure. We'll call this person R. After becoming a type 2 diabetic, but then reversing it without using safeguards, is it much easier to become a diabetic again?
Yes. Yes. Thank you for asking that question. Okay. So, and that's one of the things that we're not allowed to use the word cure, C-U-R-E, cure. Why? Well, we can say, okay, this person tested positive for diabetes, and now they test negative for diabetes. That would be considered cure, right? Well, because you had insulin resistance in the past, it's really easy to get insulin resistance in the future. We've even seen that. People on this webinar have come on and said, oh yeah, I went through phase 1 and phase 2, I got into phase 3, and then I kind of lost it, and I wasn't keeping track, and next thing I know, I got diabetes again. I had to go back to phase 1. So that's the way to look at it. Yeah, you know what? This is a disposition that your body has. Not everybody's going to do that. You have 2 people eating the same things, and one of them gets diabetes and one of them doesn't. And you're like, what the heck? We ate the same things. Why do I get diabetes? Well, it's the nature of the way your metabolism works, how much exercise you're doing, your hormones. There's just so many factors, inflammation, things that are involved in what your blood sugar is and why that happens. So the answer is yes. And so keep track of it for the rest of your life.
I want to see if I can show this on camera, sort of.
No, can't see it.
Come on. Okay. It's the diabetes solution kit. There you go.
There it is.
And if you would like a copy of this, you can find it at bartonwebinar.com. It's just a little book. It is, when we talk about phases or the kit, that's what we're talking about. So go to bartonwebinar.com. You'll be able to find it. You can get the digital version for under $20. This is what Dr. Saunders recommends to his patients in his office. And then we want you to come onto the webinar, share your experience, the good, the bad, the ugly, the bold and the beautiful, and tell us what questions you have, because that's what this webinar is created for.
I recommended it today, as a matter of fact.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
After they already came into your office?
Yeah, he was in my office, and it was going over his test results, and I said, okay. He says, how do I do that? I said, okay, you do this and this and this. He goes, it's too overwhelming. I don't know where to start. And I'm going, okay, get the diabetes solution kit, get the book, go through it, and just go step by step.
Yes, definitely. And there are many of you on this webinar that have already done that and had great success. In fact, comment, let us know in the chat. So that others can know it's real. It's a real thing. Okay. Here we go. Let's see. Frank says, does such peaks 3 times a day, bouncing back to lows well below 5, mean I have type 2 diabetes?
Well, below 5 is good. Between 4 and 5 is optimal. That's where you want to be. And that's essentially 70 to 90. That's that 4 to 5 range. But he didn't say what his peak was. So if your peak is getting over 120, then yes, you definitely have insulin resistance, and that is something that you should deal with. And that's what phase 1 of the program is all about.
Yep. All right. Juliana says, I have a question. If your blood sugar numbers, I'm not sure exactly how to read this, but okay. So if the bottom number is lower, like 123/48, what should be done?
Okay, that's blood pressure, not blood sugar.
Oh,
so what 123 is great, and that's where it should be. 48 is really low, and it usually means there's dilated blood vessels, that your blood vessels aren't holding the pressure very well, because your blood vessels are actually doing a lot of the work. we think our heart has to do all the work. Yeah, the heart pumps the blood into the blood vessels. So the heart pumps it in, the blood vessels dilate and let the blood in. And then when the heart's relaxing, the blood vessels are closing down and pushing the blood through. And so it's not just the heart doing the work. So if what's happening is her heart is beating and the blood vessel and the blood's going in, but then when the heart's relaxing, the blood vessels aren't pushing the blood through. So that's going to decrease her available circulation. And so that it's something wrong with the autonomic nervous system function. If the diastolic blood pressure is that low, they actually have a machine called an EECP, extracorporeal external counterpulsation device. It's like blood pressure cuffs, but they blow up really fast. And so they beat with your heart. So when your heart beats, they relax, and when your heart relaxes, they beat. They close down like a blood pressure cuff. And so, but it's like all over your arms and legs, and around your pelvis. And so it's going like, counter pulsation with your heart. And that might be something that would be used in that case. But find out why that pressure's too low. Your blood vessels aren't working very well. It could be electrolytes, calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium abnormalities. If they're not balanced, that could stop those smooth muscles from working. What else? Amino acids sometimes, neurotransmitters. Yeah, I'd look into that.
All right. Next question from Frank and Pat. Update day 21, phase 1, 6.2 fasting glucose today, which is down from 9+. Post-stroke 1 year ago, female, age 69, exercise daily, off diabetes and blood pressure meds since starting phase 1. On listed nutrition facts on food label, do the total calories listed include calorie from the protein also?
Oh, good question. Yes, it should. It should include protein, fat, and carbs. Yeah, calories listed should include protein.
And what are your thoughts about, I'm not sure why they're asking this, but what are your thoughts about counting calories if you're doing a type 2 diet?
It's okay. It gets really complex. And so we said, let's just focus on the carbs. And we chose that for a reason, because most people will respond really, really well to that. But we've had people who have said, gosh, I've been doing this and it's not working. And sometimes that's because of like protein or fat, those extra calories that people are taking in. So I don't know. It's counting calories is okay, but one of the problems with counting calories is like, the old Weight Watchers program. You can eat anything you want, as long as you don't go over your point value, whatever it is. And so people say, well, okay, I'm going to eat these cookies and then just have the free foods for the rest of the day or something like that. And that's not very healthy. So we really wanted it to be avoid, detox from all those carbs. And so that's why.
We want you to feel good as well. I feel like when you do those other ones, you might lose some weight, but you're not going to feel good. So this is
it's not a long-term solution either.
No.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Michelle says, my 82-year-old male friend has an A1C of 5.6 and a sweets addiction. His doctor told him he is great for his age, not a concern.
Okay. So yeah, technically, so here's the interesting thing. If you look at the death rate, okay, mortality tables for people who have at 5.4 versus 5.8. Okay, so 5.8 is non-diabetes. It's pre-diabetes, right? And the 5.4 to 5.8, the mortality doubles from 5.4 to 5.8. Mortality doubles. You're twice as likely to die with 5.8 than you are with 5.4. And it's pretty consistent across the board. So 5.6 isn't there, but I would still say, dang, if you could decrease that, that would be a really good thing to do.
And says my blood sugar is down to the 90s, but I'm feeling leg neuropathy. I'm 82. What should I do?
Okay, perfect. So get the blood sugar down. So what happens is if sugar doesn't cross the blood-brain barrier, it has to be like grabbed and pulled in by proteins. And when you have less of those proteins, then you don't get as much sugar, and then the nerves kind of go to sleep because they just don't have enough energy to maintain their normal activity. So so then you drop the blood glucose, and then there's less sugar to bring into the cells, so that it can make it worse temporarily. So the thing to do is continue on that program and take the supplement Nervala. Nervala improves the circulation on the one hand, that's the benfotiamine, and then the alpha lipoic acid helps the mitochondria to make ATP better. So you have this improved energy production. And then as your glucose transport proteins improve, then you'll get more sugar in and everything will be functioning better. So it can take 90 days. It's not something that just, happens overnight.
All right, I'm just going to quick show you the Barton webinar page here so that you can see Nervala. Actually, I'm going to expand that a little bit. So this is bartonwebinar.com. So I'm going to go to the top. You'll find a link to our 2 webinars, some past webinars that we have done. This will take you to our YouTube channel, and you're going to want to subscribe so you get notified anytime we upload new videos. Top, ask questions, scroll down to the supplements, and boom, here's Nervala. And you can find more information here, but use code webinar25 because that'll save you 25% on this supplement as well. Look, he just rattled off that benfotiamine and alpha lipoic acid like he created it or something. He did. Okay. All right, let's move on to some more questions here. I already did that one. Frank and Pat said, what is the approximate time frame the cells take to heal and the mitochondria come back to normal during the diabetes solution protocol?
That is a good question, but it can't be answered for individuals because it is highly variable. And we've even seen it here where people that, I started on the program last week and I'm normal. My blood sugar is back to normal and everything looks great. My energy's back and I feel great in like 1 week. We've had other people like I've been doing this for 6 months and I'm still not there yet. I'm better. Like the one today, how long? She said, 3 months?
20,
right?
Well,
Or
someone was just on here for 21 days.
21 days goes from 9 to 6.
Yeah.
That's significant. Okay. Yeah. So that's a good drop, but she's not there yet. So everybody's so different. It could be for some very days, other people's months. So that's, variable.
All right. We have a question here from Beverly. Beverly said my risk factor for the prediabetes was just gestational diabetes, which showed up 50 years ago. At the time, I cut out all sugar and adopted the high protein, high fat diet promoted by the American Diabetes Association. And I stayed on that diet for many years after babies were born. In between, I also had a subtotal colectomy with ileostomy and then anastomosis, one of many medical adventures, some of them orthopedic and causing much pain. Finally, around 70, I retired, slipped on the diet, wasn't exercising, gained weight, and at 81, voila, a cautionary tale. So now I am on phase 2, supported by Synachroma and turmeric BP, and I have just added Easy Relief Magnesium. I've lost 20 pounds. My blood pressure readings are much more often normal. At my last doctor appointment, my A1C hadn't budged, but I'm hopeful for the next measurement coming up. Any further advice at this stage?
You know what? I think you're doing great. I think, that is what a great story. And a lot of hard things that you've been through. And you can't discount that like all the surgeries and things like that, those stress the body a lot. And the cortisol that's released make you more insulin resistant. And so when you factor it all in, it's amazing how well you've done.
Yes. And Beverly has joined us on camera several times too. She's just adorable. All right, let's see here. Anonymous said, I'm new to this. Pre-diabetes, hemoglobin A1C 6.2, first morning blood sugar reading. I'm not exactly sure. Okay, 99 to 105. Problem, wake up with fairly clear vision, but when I get out of bed, my vision becomes blurred. Also happens when I get hungry during the day. Is the best solution fasting? If so, after fasting, how does one break the fast? Light meals, etc. I do have hypothyroiditis too. What labs and name of labs I can get in touch with? Provider not compliant with lab ordering.
Okay, so first of all, the eyes. Someone that has visual problems, like you can't see at times, if it's not associated with like dizziness or lightheadedness or feeling fatigued or faint, then, and it's just the vision, then there's a vision problem. You should see an eye doctor and say, is there anything in there? Things like glaucoma show up, and the fact that it's variable is unlikely to be specifically like glaucoma. But yeah, their blood sugar could be dropping low, but usually it's not just your vision. And if your blood sugar is getting, low, like in the 60s, for example, and you're getting vision problems, that may be an early sign of something of a vision problem like macular degeneration or something like that. So yeah, look into your eye problem. The second issue was the should I fast thing. Fasting is good for anyone, anytime. I wish I could qualify that statement, but if that what they always tell you on TV, ask your doctor if you should fast, because some people shouldn't fast. I can't think of anybody that shouldn't fast. Should pregnant women fast? Yeah. If you do intermittent fasting during pregnancy, that's the best thing you could do for your kid. You get human growth hormone. Everything improves. So how do you break the fast was your next question. I prefer eating fiber to break the fast, and fiber grows good bacteria, and I want to just start by growing good bacteria. And so I usually have something like beans and rice, or with broccoli or something like that. Or often when I break the fast, I'll start off with a smoothie. Put a bunch of vegetables, kale and spinach and all that, and then put some fruit in it. And then I have an SOS powder that I use. That's a great way to break the fast.
All right. Okay, Margaret, I commented, I don't see a question from you in here, so maybe I'll look up here. Okay. Let's see. Beverly commented about stress. Yes, stress definitely impacts everything.
Yeah.
Okay. Bonnie said, I see a lot of information on a gummy that helps get in ketosis. Is this real? Well, we did talk about this once.
We did once. Okay. Don't get into that stuff. People are trying to sell stuff. They say, wow, this is really good. I wonder what we can do to market that, And so there was somebody that said, oh, fasting is so good for you. It's amazingly good for you. And there's nothing better for your health. Therefore, how can we market that? So then they sell a kit, and it's 5 days of fasting, like fasting mimicking, they call it. So it's not really fasting, because that fasting literally means empty stomach. And they're giving you things to eat. And it's $250 for this kit that is supposed to be mimicking a fast, but you don't get all the benefits of fasting because you're actually putting things in your stomach, so you're not going to make ghrelin. And so when you stop making ghrelin, you stop making growth hormone. So you're not getting all the benefits of fasting. That's why. So they're trying to sell you a ketosis kit where you can take these ketone things, and yeah, you know what? Ketone, they you absorb them really easily. They go into your liver. They can be used by the body. Yes, they're fine. But it's not the same as fasting.
Okay, Margaret, your questions weren't in the Q&A. They're actually in the chat, so that's why I didn't see them. Okay, so Margaret said, is eating a ketogenic diet hard? There's a few questions in here, so we'll just go through these separate. Is eating a ketogenic diet hard on the kidneys?
The answer is no. No, kidneys. So we were told in medical school 30 years ago, is it 30? Yeah. that protein is hard on the kidneys. Protein is not hard on the kidneys. The problem is, if you're eating a whole bunch of protein and you have kidney failure, then you build up faster those levels of creatinine and urea nitrogen. So you get urea, and then you get a bunch of ammonia. And so you get toxic more easily if you have kidney failure. So that's not the same thing as protein is hard on the kidneys. If you have kidney failure, you're going to get toxic if you eat a whole bunch of protein. Does that make sense? It's not the same thing. So no, protein is not hard on the kidneys. Protein is very good for your kidneys. Your kidneys need it just like every other organ in your body. And so like a ketogenic diet that is relatively high in protein. So it's moderate protein and you can eat fat. But no, ketogenic diet is not hard on the kidneys.
Okay, and then Margaret also just started the diabetes kit, and the saturated fats concern her. Will her cholesterol rise?
Okay, when your insulin level goes down, then you don't have that signal to make more cholesterol. See, this is a lot of things. There's a disconnect here in medicine where they're attributing every bit of cholesterol to something that you ate. And that's not even the case at all. The large majority of your cholesterol, if you never ate cholesterol, then all of your cholesterol would be made in your body and it would still be high. And it has almost nothing to do with what you eat. But insulin resistance is one of those things, because the insulin gets high. It's a growth hormone. And for growth, you have to have cholesterol. Cholesterol is required for every single cell, or you can't make even one cell without cholesterol. So insulin tells your body to make more cholesterol. Your liver makes more cholesterol. So as your insulin level drops down, your cholesterol will drop down. And everybody, we've had several people comment on that, go, I was really surprised. I'm eating all this fat and my cholesterol dropped down. It's because the insulin resistance drops down.
All right. Okay. We're about out of time. I'm going to quick do this. I just want to let you guys know that I still have 11 questions that we haven't gotten to, because everyone still thinks I'm ignoring them. I promise I'm not. They're still here. I just can't do them all. Okay. Sienna says, I have lost weight from 122 pounds to 106 now since last May when following phase 1 of the program. I am 5 feet 5 inches tall and a 68-year-old woman. My latest A1C is 6.0 after I eat 2 meals a day for a month. My C-peptide test is 1.1. Fasting insulin is 6. My PCP said my test results are all normal. Why can't I gain weight as before?
Yeah, you're okay. So your insulin is not bad, 1.1, that's good. But your blood sugar, your average blood sugar is high. The hemoglobin A1C of 6.0 gives you an average blood sugar somewhere in the range of 120. And so that's an average. That means that means everything is shifted up 20 points or so. Um, and you're only eating 2 meals a day. I don't get it. If you're eating at night, that could be a problem. If your 2 meals a day are like lunch and dinner, if you move that back to breakfast and lunch and skip dinner, that does make a difference as far as being able to lower the hemoglobin A1C. Another thing that might be considered, if you have any sweet taste, anything that tastes sweet, so artificial sweeteners, or agave nectar and all these things that people use to sweeten things, that could be an issue. Excess protein could be an issue. Some people, protein can be made into sugar. It's called gluconeogenesis, and some people just do a lot of that, and so they end up with this. Eating high protein causes them to have excessive sugar, and some people don't burn fat very easily. They just switch to protein burning instead of fat burning. I've had people that have done that. In which case, then you have to have a low protein, high fiber, high fat diet. It's kind of a weird diet to have. Um, so those are some issues. Snacking in between meals could be an issue. Drinking fruit juices could be an issue. What you're eating and how much in those 2 meals. There was a study done on a 8-hour window versus a 5-hour window of eating, and people gained more weight on a 5-hour window of eating. And so they asked the question why, and they reported, and people ate more calories in 5 hours than they did in 8 hours, um, uh, uh, because the way the 8 hours, if you eat at 7, um, and then you eat again at 2 or so, and you don't have any snacks in between. Whereas a 5-hour window, people are eating more or less constantly throughout that. So um, it's there's just a lot of factors involved, and those are all things to consider.
Oh, we're out of time. There's so many questions I'd really like to get to in here. Okay, we will see you next week, Dr. Swan. Actually, I'll see you tomorrow on the Healthy Heart webinar. But thank you so much.
Yay!
We appreciate you. And thank you.
Bye.
I'll try to see if I can answer some of these for you guys. Let's see. Richard said I get email offers touting 1 month miracle diabetes cures. Yeah. Okay, so Dr. Saunders would say there is no magical pill. But he will tell you, for example, we have a Synachroma product, and that has vitamin D, chromium, selenium. There are people that are deficient in those things and have found by taking that, it improves their blood sugar. Most people, that would not be the case. It's the support. But that would be one thing that is a possibility. Otherwise, he will say, no, there is no magic pill or potion. You really do need to detox and get rid of the sugar and change your diet. Okay, let's see. Coenzyme Q10, that is, I'm not going to be able to answer that one. I'm trying to see if I can help Robin with yours if I stay under there. This is another thing that I'll mention. You know what? This is probably one of the first webinars where we haven't brought this up, but Dr. Saunders highly recommends getting testing done. If you are really struggling with your numbers and you can't get them down, between 70 and 90, and you can't figure out why you're doing all the things, it's not stress related. You've avoided the sugars, the artificial sweeteners, all the natural sweeteners. You're doing all the things. There are some tests that he recommends, and I'm going to post those here in the chat for you guys. So this would be your hemoglobin A1C, glucose level, insulin level, and C-peptide. Those are the tests that he prefers that you do. So those are posted in the chat on Zoom. Okay, let's see. Not sure on that. Let's see. Someone had said they had started Synachroma capsules for 2 months in the hope that it will lower my erratic blood sugar, as you claimed. I've also started intermittent fasting for a few years and I've lost nearly 20 kilograms. So my question is, what is the proper treatment? Dr. Saunders will tell you that it is the Diabetes Solution Kit. The Diabetes Solution Kit is really the answer. You can find that at bartonwebinar.com. There is a link to that. Yes, you can take Synachroma. It will probably have some positive effects. But if you're not changing your diet, it may not work. If you have questions about products or shipping, etc., I would encourage you to reach out to support@bartonpublishing.com. We do talk a lot about taking your meds with fasting. Some of them are okay. You do need to be careful if you're taking like blood pressure medicine or something, because your blood pressure while you're fasting will drop. And so you need to be careful with those. That would be something to chat with your doctor about. Okay. Okay, that's all that I can answer for today, but come back next week with your questions. Again, post those in the Q&A next week right away, because we usually start with the top questions and work our way through. Again, today there were still 12 questions that I didn't get answered. So I'm so sorry, you guys, but we'll see you next week. Thank you for hanging out with us. And you can join us for the Healthy Heart webinar tomorrow if you would like. You can register for that at Barton Web.